Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with the director of a brand new Jimi Hendrix movie, and he's been in the directing business for a number of years, and it's basically he literally started at zero and just worked his way up. He's known for films with a heart that focuses on humanitarian issues, and the movie's originally titled called Room Full of Mirrors, and we'll talk about that. And also directed A Lion's Trail, A Place Like Home, and also worked on The Who, The Incredible String Band, Yes, and more. And after reading about this guy, I like him to direct my biography. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plush Studios, somewhere in the UK, ladies and gentlemen, the director of the brand new Jimi Hendrix movie, starting at zero, Peter Neal. Peter, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
It's such an honor to have you on as well. So I've been looking forward to it. So you got a new film about Jimi Hendrix, which will be coming out called Starting at Zero, and you've been directing this, and is originally titled Room Full of Mirrors, and we'll talk more about that. You're best known for films with heart that focuses on humanitarian issues, and of course, you also directed Lion's Trail, A Place Like Home. You also worked on The Who, Incredible String Band, Yes, and more. And before we get into all that, including about Starting at Zero, tell us how I first got started.
Well, in the film business.
Yeah, or you can start, before that, wherever you want. So, I mean, wherever you start, it's up to you. I'm open.
Well, I started in the film business much like Jimmy started on the Chitlin circuit, doing the grind, making all those boring films about the machinery and this and that and the other. But I kind of progressed out of that in a few years into making films for TV, really. About one section of me was making films about wildlife, and the other section was making films about current affairs. So it was a kind of interesting introduction to work. I worked for an independent filmmaker who was kind of very keen to bring on new directors. So he gave me lots of interesting jobs and things. And it was while I was working on some other film that this guy burst into my edit suite. It happened that I didn't know this guy, but I'd interviewed his wife apparently a few days earlier, and he just grabbed me and he said, "You have to come with me right now to the Albert Hall to see this amazing guitarist."
Oh my goodness!
So we, he dragged me up, not dragged me because I was very willing to go. Being interested and having, started really making music films because that was my other passion, music, apart from filmmaking. But he dragged me to the Albert Hall and there was Jimmy doing a sound check. And in the front row was Clapton and Beck and Townsend, I think. I can't remember exactly who was there, but it was like the cream of the British guitarists, the royalty, sitting there with their mouths open watching this guy do his sound check. And John, who was John Marshall, who was the producer of the film, eventually, what we made, said, "We have to film this guy because he's not going to be with us for long." And I, at the time, I didn't think much about that. But since then, I thought, wow, he knew something I didn't know at the time. But he thought he was like a shooting star and he was going to burn himself out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Because the energy he was giving out was so huge, and because, well, that's another story, but Jimmy got into some fairly bad company later in his life.
Right, exactly. And of course, he says, and the wind cries, Mary, get me out of here along the watchtower.
Yeah, well, that was because his girlfriend Kathy Etchingham didn't like the way she cooked, so she threw the plate on the floor and smashed it, and Jimmy walked out. And uh, he ended up following her, but she got on a bus, so he missed her, and he was by traffic lights at the time. So when he got next day, apparently he walked in the studio and they just recorded Wind Cries Mary in one take.
Oh my goodness.
So whether he had it in his mind or whether he'd written it overnight, I don't know, but it's a kind of interesting story.
Oh my goodness. And of course, be around Jimi Hendrix as well too. And what was it like for him to be around him and also interacting with his bands, and maybe some of the things that we don't know about Jimi Hendrix. We see him in print, TV, radio, media, internet, and everything else, and maybe some things that just kind of blows us away about him.
Yeah, well, I think the thing about Jimmy was that he was one of those extremely charismatic figures. I've heard it said about Robert Johnson, the blues player, exactly the same thing, that you could be in a room and Jimmy would walk in and everybody would know. His presence would be felt palpable, So kind of when I first met him, I was struck by what a gentleman he was. How very modest, very kind of quiet, gentlemanly guy. Obviously, very well brought up by his parents. But he was a very kind of flamboyant figure. I mean, I remember walking with him through Soho to go to a photo shoot, and he was dressed with all his, hats and feathers and brightly coloured coat, and it just felt very surreal walking through London, which was, to be honest, was a very grey place in terms of what people wore in those days. So it was quite an extraordinary experience just to be with him in the street like that. And then we got to the studio and we'd arranged this photo session because Jimmy was being marketed as the wild man of Borneo, which is about as far from the truth as you could go. But it was successful. It was a really good marketing campaign to bring you notice, the guy who you wouldn't want your daughter to go out with, that kind of thing. And we did this photo session. We interviewed him. I asked him what was the questions he hated being asked most. And then I got Mitch and Noel to take turns to ask him those questions. Because Jimmy had a very sly sense of humor. He was a very funny guy to start with. I mean, he was very sharp. And his answers were always kind of coded in a certain way. So that was a good trick. And then I'd thought about trying to get him to play some acoustic guitar. And I brought along a 12-string guitar I had at the time. And I left it in the corner of the studio. I restrung it for a left-handed player and just put it in the corner of the studio and just hope that he noticed it, which of course he did. And I think we'd finished filming the interview and various other bits and pieces, and then he just said, do you mind if I play that guitar? So I said, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, kind of hoping he might say that. And then he picked up the guitar and he started playing a few notes, and then he said, can I start that again? And we were running out of film because we were making this film on a shoestring. So we only had a few reels of short ends left. And I said to him, whatever you like, but we might run out of film. So he just launched into this absolutely perfect version of Hear My Train Coming.
Oh my.
And it was faultless. Having just fiddled around on the guitar for a few minutes, he was absolutely faultless. And that was just such a stroke of luck, really.
That is amazing as well too, and of course, with starting at zero as well too, it takes it from just describing the beginning of Jimi Hendrix all the way to the end, and I guess it's just kind of like just similar to what other musicians have been through, and also almost like what happened in the '60s is reflecting now. That's what it seems like with starting at zero. I mean, just amazing.
Well, I think you're right. Absolutely. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, the scenes on our streets are looking like the '60s, and the kind of protests look like the '60s. But I think that's certainly true. But I think also that the dreams and aspirations of people haven't changed from the '60s. They want a just and equitable society. They want peace. They want to get on with their lives, basically. And all that social revolution in the '60s is really kind of proving to be kind of like a sad thing, that it never moved on from those beginnings. But I mean, I think on both levels, Jimi was very reflective of the '60s, and that's what I'm trying to do an online event on the 18th or 19th of September, which I'm going to show about 35 minutes of clips from the film to tell his story and to deliver his message, basically, because I think it's a message we missed at the time and we should really listen to again.
Right. Exactly. And of course, if Jimi Hendrix were alive today, do you think his words and music would still influence a generation today like he did 50 years ago?
Well, I think they have influenced music today. I think, he was a pioneer of so many forms of music, from metal to funkadelic to rap, acid house, you name it. He's there in that music today. I think he remains a huge influence on music because his music was revolutionary. I mean, it can't be stressed too much that nobody played like Jimi Hendrix, and nobody ever will. But that music is timeless, I think. And I think a lot of people today, most people today probably know Jimi Hendrix from video clips, which is obviously going to be performances. But he only ever performed about a third of his repertoire on stage. The rest of it, he never performed live. So there's a huge part of his music which a lot of people aren't even familiar with. So I brought that into starting at zero. And starting at zero, the title really means it starts literally from zero, from before he was born. It was when Jimi said, before I could remember anything, I could remember music, stars and planets. I could go to sleep and write 15 symphonies. That's his opening words in the film, because the film is entirely narrated in his own words.
Mm-hmm. And of course, how's this portrayed within for a generation that's not familiar with Jimi Hendrix?
Mm-hmm.
And Jimi Hendrix is still one of the most powerful musicians on the planet 50 years after his death. How's it portrayed within starting at zero for generations that's not familiar with him?
Well, I hope it will introduce them to him if they don't know about him, because he is probably one of the most influential and talented musicians and composers of the 20th century. So people should, he should live on in that sense. Simply, if you like, simply because of the music, because the music is so spectacular, and the sounds he made, I don't think anybody else can make those kind of sounds. I remember going to a convention in this country in 1984, I think, Jimi Hendrix convention that I was asked to go to. And I was curious as to why some of the people had turned up, because there were these kind of very ordinary looking sort of 30-year-olds with a 10-year-old boy. And I asked them, what made you come to this event in this muddy field? They said, well, it wasn't us, it was him who brought us, pointing to their 10-year-old. So I said to the 10-year-old, well, you know, you weren't even born when Jimi died. What is it about Jimi that attracts you? And he said, it's the sound he makes. And I think that's literally the key to it. Is that sound is something very, very special. You know, you've heard the old stories about good vibrations, and the healing power of vibrations and the awakening power of vibrations. I think you know, people in the Vietnamese War, they used to listen to Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Carlos Santana, people like that, because it was music that gave them the courage to go on. And I think there's something about the sound of that music that it breaks illusions. It brings you back to who you really are. Because when Jimi performed, what was interesting about a lot of his performances, whatever country, you know, he was playing in, whether it was Germany or Sweden or the UK or France or Italy, people in the audience felt he was playing specifically for them. You know, I've heard people say, oh, he was playing at this concert in Germany and he was playing German music.
German music? Oh my gosh. You know, people back then, you think of German music as the polka and tuba and eating.
I know. But it was speaking, what they meant was it was speaking directly to them, you know. You know, you felt he was playing for you personally when you were in an audience. When he was really on his top form, it was so spectacular. You got so involved in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And of course too that you originally titled Room Full of Mirrors, then you changed it to Starting at Zero, and you know, just simply why the title change, Room Full of Mirrors. It sounds like that you know, he was in a room full of mirrors, just having a wall of sound and everything like that, and you know, it sounds like it's a project that kind of just evolved over time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the concept, the reason we called it Room Full of Mirrors was because of a poem he wrote. And also he made a song called Room Full of Mirrors, which goes, I used to live in a room full of mirrors. All I could see was me. So I took my spirit and I smashed the mirrors. Now the whole world is here for me to see. So it's a story about breaking the walls of illusion, finding your real true self. So that was the origins of the title, A Room Full of Mirrors. But unfortunately, in the period when we were prevented from finishing it, somebody wrote a book, Charlie Cross, a very good book about Jimi, a biography, and he called it Room Full of Mirrors.
No, so it sounds like somebody indirectly stole from you. Oh my goodness.
Well, he did get it from my wife. But I don't mind, you know. I mean, so we had to retitle it in the end. So we came up with this idea of starting at zero because one of the nice things Jimi said, I was born at the age of 0.
I think that makes sense. I think I'll describe my my life as starting at 0 to where I'm at. Maybe you can call yourself starting at 0 to where you're at, and anybody for those who are watching, listening, starting at 0. And I think that's really good too. So we'll talk more about the starting at 0 in just a minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. It's powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with director Peter Neal of Starting at Zero, the new film about Jimi Hendrix here on the Mike Wagner Show. And as he directed the film when he started in 1967, when you first met him, what are some of the challenges and triumphs in making the film?
In making Starting at Zero, well, the challenges were what kind of film we were going to make. because there'd been a lot of documentaries about Jimi Hendrix. Oh, formulaic thing. Here's a bit of concert. Here's somebody talking about him. Here's another bit of concert. You know, the talking head show. and also the comments all being from other people who may well, you know, to a greater or lesser extent, have known Jimmy, but it wasn't him talking about himself ever. So we decided that, you know, the basic concept for this film was it was to be Jimmy's film. I mean, it's really hard to define the film other than the fact that there was no preconceived notion about how it would work out. It was really made from bits and pieces, and I started by listening endlessly to his music, and I had access to some 900 hours of tapes that had been left in the studio when people had just left recorders running, when he was doodling and jamming and playing around, and home tapes that he'd done when he was writing songs. And he'd always said that his music was his diary. So I literally took that as an instruction. If I can get the music to work to tell the story, then everything else will fall into place. So I spent a lot of time rearranging bits and pieces of music till I got what I felt was the kind of curve of his life, if you like. And then because we'd researched all his interviews and poems and bits of paper he'd scribbled on in restaurants and hotel bedrooms, I'd managed to kind of fit that together as a book in which he tells his story from his birth to bye-bye.
The untimely death at 27 seems to be the magic number where so many people gone away too soon, and fortunately many of us have gone past 27, and I don't want to think about that number, to be honest.
No, I think that's a bit of a myth, really. I mean, I know there were a lot of 27 clubbers. In fact, Robert Johnson was the first 27er, and then you had all the 60s ones, the Janis Joplins and not Kurt Cobain, he was later, but Brian Jones and Jimi Hendrix, of course. And lots of people have this mystical thing about 27, which is understandable. You know, if you're into numerology, it's quite a significant number. but I think one can read too much into these things. I mean, the fact was that he left us too soon. That's a fact.
I have to say this about my significant thing with 27. My single life had died and went into married mode when at 27. So go figure on that one.
Well, there you go. That's a game changer. What can we say?
Oh, I know. I'm just simply saying those who worry about 27 as well too. And let's get back to about some of the challenges and triumphs. And you talked about up the time to 27, and maybe some of the other things that some of the challenges and things you're still may or may not know about Jimi Hendrix, like his influences and how he got these ideas, the genesis of the songs, and what inspired him to write all the lyrics, Hey Joe, and Along the Watchtower, and all the classics. I mean, every Hendrix fan just knows all the songs, the inspiration to all the lyrics and everything else behind it.
Yeah, well, I think I interviewed Carlos Santana a while back about Jimmy, and he said, Jimmy, like people like to put him in a box of he was a blues player, he was a rock player, he was this player, that player. But what Carlos said was, Jimmy played life. And I think that's really the best way of putting it. You can't box him. He hated being wrapped in cellophane, as he called it, or put in a box, because that was so unnecessary. He says, there's only two types of music. There's good music and there's bad music. Like there's only two types of films, a good film and a bad film.
Right.
His attitude. And I think that by saying his music was about life, it was very personal for him. he took a lot of incidents out of his own personal life and started off writing a song. I mean, like When Christ Mary, for instance. But there were other influences from his childhood when because he had a pretty unhappy childhood. And then he took that into a universal area. He took that personal thing and made it a universal thing, so that it was something that was not just about him, but about everything that was going on. And because he was a very kind of intelligent guy, he was experiencing the world and what was going on in the world. And the 60s was a very traumatic decade. There was a lot of darkness and violence in the 60s, as well as all the flowers and peace and all that business. It was a pretty tumultuous decade altogether. So he had a lot of material to work from. I mean, like Machine Gun is about the Vietnam War, undoubtedly. The folly of war. How you're killing members of your own family. Why are you doing this? So, and I think 1983 was about climate change, as was Up from the Skies. I've been here before. I come back to find a world that is burning. Very, very much a prophetic vision of what's going on today.
It sounds like it too. And a couple of songs that came to mind too, Purple Haze and Foxy Lady, it's based on those. And I'm sure that some other Hendrix songs will pop in my head as time will go on. So basically, I guess we're just kind of like just going on with it. And I'm sure Hendrix would have just popped some ideas in his head. Like talking to you and I'm sure ideas will pop in his head at random.
Yeah, well, he always said Purple Haze was about a dream he had about living under the sea and being hit by a purple ray. But other people have said, no, it's not. It's about some other substance that he took. But I mean, Jimmy was very kind of cautious about saying what his songs were about, because for him, they were personal, but you could make of them what you like in a way. I mean, Purple Haze was the first real Jimi Hendrix song, because Hey Joe was actually, an old ballad that he did. He called it a cowboy song, I think. It's not really where we're at. And then, of course, Purple Haze came out, and those first two chords, I mean, nobody had heard anything like it. It was just so extraordinary that it blew everyone away. I mean, it just cracked open the music scene totally. People started scurrying.
They're like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, people were scurrying for cover when they heard that.
And also too, Foxy Lady, that's been very popular, and that's one of the songs that resonates. And also, Are You Experienced? And I think, to me, that definitely just, I would have to say, in my opinion, I'm sure Jimmy would disagree, that pretty much sums up Jimi Hendrix. Are You Experienced?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, Foxy Lady, we said about that's about the only happy song I've ever written. So I think Foxy Lady was simply what it says it is. He loved women. But Are You Experienced definitely was a very serious song in that sense. I mean, he was trying to tell you all to come along with him and become experienced. And there's a famous cartoon of Jimmy applying for a job, and the interviewer is saying, "Yes, but Mr. Hendrix, are you experienced?"
Oh my goodness! No wonder I was seeing those cartoons. I see, Mr. Hendrix. You have this, but are you experienced? Yes. I did have a vision. You're right, and I'm feeling these visions. I mean, oh my gosh! I bet you Hendrix is in the room right now. And he says, "Yeah, it's gonna be in cartoons after all." I can see that. So.
Yeah, I mean, all his songs were about, I think, things that are I think they were very relevant in the 60s, reflecting what was going on and what was troubling the world at that time. But I think they're just as relevant now, because exactly the same things are troubling the world today. And we're still threatened by ridiculous war. We're still kind of living in a society that's unequal, where, in fact, it's even more unequal now, where some group of a few people hold 90% of the world's wealth, and people are starving to death. And you know, we've got terrific price as well. I think last number and counting was 80 million people are now dispossessed from their lands and homes. You know, serious problem.
People. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. And of course, you know, we'll talk about some of the other films that you know, touch that as well too, sort of an offshoot with Jimi Hendrix. And before we get to that, where can people see the film Starting at Zero?
Well, they won't be able to see it till the end of the year probably, but as I say, I'm putting on this virtual event, if you like, in September on the 50th anniversary of his death, which you can find out about at JimiHendrixReturns.earth. And it's really going to be, I'm going to talk about him, his influence, his messages, and then we're going to have a kind of Q&A afterwards, and also hopefully some music too. So that's that kind of is like a way of trying to awaken people to the film that's going to be coming out later in the year.
That is great. We're looking forward to that, and we'll talk about some of the other projects you've worked on as well, too. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with director Peter Neal of Starting at Zero, the new film about Jimi Hendrix, will be coming out at the end of the year, and also the 50th anniversary of Jimi Hendrix as well, too, here on the Mike Wagner Show. You've also directed some other films as well, too. You worked on The Who, The Incredible String Band, Yes, and more. He also directed A Lion's Trail, A Place Like Home, and The Migrant Way, which is also talking about, in some things like in other films, exile in their own land for Christian aid, which involves poverty in South Africa. Maybe you can tell us about some of your other films.
Yeah, well, I got into making what I suppose you could loosely call social documentaries. Injustice has always interested me, and I've always thought one of the best ways you can work in the documentary field is to try and alert people to these situations. You can't really solve these situations, but you can at least make people aware of them. So I did a series of films in South America, actually, for the United Nations. They'd been very worried that they hadn't managed to reach their poverty target, and they couldn't work out why. So they asked an independent company, in fact, the guy who was employing me at the time, Derek Knight, to set up 3 directors to go to different parts of the world and investigate this whole thing and what was going wrong with aid, basically. So I went to Peru, which had always interested me, and spent a lot of time there researching, and then I made 3 films about Peru, about the cities and the barriadas that were surrounded, where all the people from the country were coming in looking for work, about students and university students up in the Andes, and about farming. And that was joined together with other films that were made in Africa and in Indonesia. So that was a huge project, because what we all found was that aid wasn't working because it was really being misspent. You'd buy a tractor for a guy on a farm in Peru, and he had no tools to repair it or no petrol to make it go.
Oh, no. I was just going to ask you about the whole aid thing, where there had been a big story where the aid was misused, and sometimes governments would get a hold of aid and they
Oh,
spent it for themselves. And
yeah. Well, that happened. That happened too. But I mean, it was also aid was never aligned to helping the country help itself, and that was the nut of the problem. That aid was given with ignorance, really. The idea with aid should be to help a country stand on its own feet, to improve its own agriculture. But people are very happy to use aid to grow cocoa beans for the European or the American market, and thus deprive the actual people of the country of a living. So sometimes it worked in the opposite way. Quite often, in the opposite way is how it should work. So that was a big eye opener to me. I mean, it really was.
so it sounds like with Peru, the people over there, it's just like it was supposed to help themselves, but then their mentality is like, we're here to help other people. And that's what it sounded like. And it sounded like that there was some miscommunication about how the aid was used.
Yeah, absolutely. They were aid was going in the wrong direction. And I think that still happens, unfortunately. So, I mean, we made these films, and for about 2 years, the United Nations were too ashamed to show them. Eventually, they did release them, but I mean, it was kind of like I suppose, biting off the hand that fed you.
Pretty much, yeah. And of course, with Africa, it seems to be a real hotbed when it comes to aid. It's like, how do they handle their aid, and how is the aid pretty much mishandled in certain parts of Africa?
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. But then, I mean, the problem for Africa was it was colonized by the Europeans, and that kind of really is the root problem in Africa. It's never gone away. I mean, we taught them to be corrupt.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, there's a lot of sins to the European invasions of other countries and taking all their wealth and everything, and really, I mean, the whole British Empire thing is about, oh, but we taught them to be civilized. Well, that's just doesn't wash. I'm afraid.
It made me think of Dr. Livingstone, and of course, just a paraphrase that he told one of his people, and he says, "I'm gonna leave it up to you to build Africa and everything else." And I think nothing was ever done about it. That's what it sounds like with some of the mentalities, like leave it for somebody else, and they just pretty much piss on it, or just walk away, or just misuse it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the Belgian Congo, which was the only private colony. The entire country was the colony of King Leopold of Belgium, and he, during his vicious exploitation of that country, there were some 5 million people killed in the Congo. Wow. And it was only because some guy in the docks in London saw all these ships coming back from the Congo loaded with rubber and produce. And the ships went back loaded with guns.
Oh my goodness! And
so he blew the whistle on it, But that, a lot of people don't know about that. It was kind of it was a genocide took place, really.
Wow!
So I mean that's probably the worst example of a colony, and the Congo is still a mess.
Mm-hmm. And of course, too, with other countries, like say in Asia, what's their mentality when it comes to aid, and have they handled it or mishandled it, or say parts of Europe, or even like say in Russia, and I think there's maybe other parts like Australia or New Zealand, and how do you think aid was handled or mishandled in those countries, and what was their mentality?
Well, I don't know intimately. I mean, I don't know that much about Russia other than its most recent history, because I mean, Russia is a very nasty dictatorship, and it's in a bad state. I mean, it's bankrupt, Russia, basically, because it sunk all its hopes into oil.
Uh-huh.
And that depended on the assistance and cooperation of America, because the Russians don't have the technology the Americans do. So when the kind of the cooperation slackened off, Russia was left bankrupt.
And we thought they traded vodka for oil. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, they were last time they were drilling in the Arctic, weren't they? You know, I mean, unbelievable.
Oh
And
my.
that all fell apart because the Americans withdrew from that. You know,
Mhm.
and they didn't have the technology to do it on their own. So
Wow. That is something too. And of course, you did some work for humanitarian aid with some of your films. You also worked on some other films with the Who, the Incredible String Band, and Yes Songs and more too. And I'd say that movie, Yes, is one of my favorites. And tell us about those and what got you inspired to work on the Who, Incredible String Band, Yes, and others.
well, I've been working on music films because, as I said before, it was my other career choice. It was either music or films, and I think I was a bit better at films than music, although I love playing music. You know, so I was always interested in combining those two loves, and I'd done a few films about string quartets and musical towns and things, documentaries. And then came the chance to do the Jimi Hendrix film. So having done that, I couldn't stop. So I went on to do a film with the Incredible String Band, who I thought were another quite out of this world band at the time. So we made this film together, and then I got into doing videos for Free, Cat Stevens, Black Sabbath, things like that. Then I knew Steve Howe, who played in Yes, so we suggested to them that we filmed their concert at the Rainbow. So that's where Yes Songs came along, and we filmed that. And we also did a fascinating roadshow film for Jethro Tull, which came on in the middle of a concert. It was the stage would go down, a big screen would come up, and then come on this 10-minute film about this ballerina who danced through a mirror and goes into this crazy world of animals. And this was Jethro Tull dressed up as animals. That was hilarious. But that was good fun, you know. And I think after that, that's when Pete Townsend saw that and wanted us to do something with him, a similar kind of thing, which we started on, but we never kind of really got to grips with it. But I mean, it was the Who were a pretty dynamic band to work with.
Oh my goodness. And of course, seeing their films, Quadrophenia, and of course they
Yeah.
had Live at Leeds, and I'm trying to think what was the other one. I think it was the kids are all right. That was the one I was thinking of. The kids are all right. I mean, just
Right, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'd say that's just one of the funniest. And I remember one part where it's like, Keith Moon tries to undress somebody. We're like, what the heck is going on here?
Keith Moon, he was totally wild, Keith Moon.
and of course, you hear about the water problems in Flint, Michigan. That's been all over the news. And I point to the genesis of all the problem with water in Flint, Michigan. Keith Moon on his 21st birthday drove his Lincoln Continental into the pool at a Holiday Inn in Flint, Michigan. That's where the problem started.
That's where it all began. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, when we were filming, we'd all turn up, and then we'd say, "Where's Keith?" And they say, "Oh, he's gone to Spain." But we were supposed to be filming today. No, he just decided last night he'd go to Spain. So.
And makes you wonder, what is he doing?
He was a brilliant drummer, though. He really was. I mean, exceptionally talented, much underrated as a drummer, I think.
Mm-hmm. And of course, where can we find all those movies, including about humanitarian aid, Lion's Trail, and of course, other works? Where can we find those?
Well, I guess the best way is to Google them now. They're probably all on YouTube. All my films turn up on YouTube somewhere down the line. obviously United Nations films will be available from the United Nations. But a lot of the films I did were privately sponsored in that way. But the music films are all around. I mean, my entire incredible string band film is on YouTube. I mean, I didn't say it could be, so it just appeared there. Somebody posted it.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. We know what to look for as well too. And what can we expect from you in 2020 and 2021 and beyond, Peter?
Well, that will have to be a secret.
Okay, we'll keep it under wraps, and then when you're ready, you let us know, and we'll have you back on. So you just give me the date, a little secret, like in code or something. So we'll do that. So
okay, I want to get this Jimi film out there properly first. It's kind of obsessed me for so long. I want to get it out of my system. Then I can really get into other stuff I want to do.
Sounds great. We're looking forward to that, Peter. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
Biggest influence?
Yes.
What, in filmmaking?
It can be anyone. It can be filmmaking. It can be whatever endeavor. It can be anything personal, or you can say Jimi Hendrix offshoots or something. It's like biggest influence. You can pick any one.
Well, Jimmy's been a huge influence, but I mean, I'm also a kind of avid moviegoer. So, but I love a kind of the art cinema. I loved all the Ingmar Bergman films and the Jean Renoir films and the classics, if you like. But I also love the stuff that's coming out today. I mean, I'm a great fan of the Guardians films.
Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy? That's
Yeah.
my favorite. I'm looking forward to Guardians 3. I was looking for until the pandemic hit. Now me, my family, including my boys, have to wait till 2021. They keep saying, Dad, when's that movie coming out? I said, I don't know. I'm not in charge of it. So.
Yeah, and I could see endless versions of Deadpool.
Oh my gosh. It's like, how many is out there really? It's like, I think I've lost track on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just so funny.
And I'm sure
Ryan Reynolds is just too much.
I think Jimi Hendrix got to him. I can tell you that. So
yeah, maybe. I hope so.
and what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
What? If they want to get into the film business, don't. Don't, it'll kill you. No, I mean, you have to believe what you have to offer is worthwhile, because if you're making films, you're full of doubt all the time. It's like doing anything, but you have to remember that if it interests you, it's going to interest somebody else. There's going to be somebody else on this planet who will have the same interests as you, will be inspired by the same things you are. So it's just like, keep true to yourself and keep going. Follow your heart.
And that's very true, too. Once again, Peter Neal, the director of the new Jimi Hendrix movie, Starting at Zero, coming out, in September with a preview, and also later in the year. Peter, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic, or as they say in England, ab fab. Looking forward to having you again soon. Once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people check out Starting at Zero?
Well, you can check out, there's a book out which is simply startingatzero.com, hyphenated, starting at -zero.com. That will tell you about the book and something about me. But the event we're putting on is called Jimi Hendrix Returns. So if you just put in Jimi Hendrix Returns as one word, .earth, you'll get our website, and you'll get the book website, and you'll get all the information about what we're trying to do.
That is fantastic. Once again, Peter, very big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. We'd love you to have back on in 2020 and 2021 beyond. And you've been great, and we'll just meet somewhere along the Watchtower.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mike. It's been great. Thank you for having me.